Hi guys, it's Mr. Stackhouse here. So we just did a warm up about taking numbers and squaring them, meaning multiplying them by themselves to see what new number we come up with. Okay. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about these things called square roots. It's basically just working backwards. Okay. So the question might be, what are square roots? What are they? Right. So it's basically, I'm going to start with an example. If we said, what's the square root of 4? Okay. We're asking what number times itself, that same number, is equal to 4. Now, I think off the top of our heads, we all probably are saying 2. And it's absolutely right. That's because 2 times 2 does get me to 4. So we would write it like this. The square root of 4 is 2. It's saying what number times itself gets me to 4. Okay. So I'm going to invite you to pause your video. Okay. Pause it now and take a look and try those examples in the squares below. Pause it now. All right, so we're back. So now I'm going to just give you the answers so you can check them, see how you did. Okay, the square root of these answers. Let's take a look. The square root of 4 is 2. 2 times 2. Square root of 100 is 10, then 6, then 8, 1, 4, 11. Oh, that's a tough one. 7, 9, 3, 5, and 12. Okay, so there's our answers. Hopefully we did pretty well, okay? So down below, the question asks, well, what do you see about all of those answers? Give it a second, try to think. I'm going to give you a couple seconds and see what you come up with. All right, well, hopefully you thought about it and came up with, oh, those numbers are all whole numbers. There's no decimals, okay? So something to that effect. No decimals being being complete whole numbers, all right? And we have a special name for those things, and they're called perfect squares. Okay, so perfect squares are numbers that when you take the square root of them, they come out to be whole numbers. So like the square root of 4 is 2, so it's a perfect square. The square root of 100 is 10. It's a perfect square. The square root of 225, oh, that's a big one. That's a perfect square because it's 15, right? All whole numbers, no decimals. Okay. All right. So the next thing might be, okay, so now that we have perfect squares, what happens if they're not perfect squares, right? So we're going to break them down. It's called simplifying. You'll see the directions in most of our sheets or questions say simplify, right? So we're going to take this square root of 20 and break it down as much as we can. And the biggest hint here that we can look for perfect squares. And what I do is when I first get a sheet, I try to write down the perfect squares. It's going to be easiest if you memorize them. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, and I'll keep going eventually. But so we're looking for which of these numbers can go into the square root of 20. Okay. So, well, 1 can definitely go in, but that doesn't get us much. 4 can, 9 cannot, 16 cannot, and then the rest are all bigger then. So what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite this. Square root of 20 is equal to the square root of 4 times the square root of 5, because 4 times 5 is 20. Oh, the reason why we do it right here, okay, right here, is that we can simplify this even more. The square root of 4, it's a perfect square. It's 2 root 5. And this would be our final answer. The square root of 20, when we simplify it, is 2 root 5. Okay, so let's look at the second example. Just separate a little bit. Okay, so what numbers in our red list over here can go into 75? Well, 1 can, 4 cannot, 9 cannot, 16 can't, 25 can. So far we've come up with 1 and 25. 36 no, 49 no, 64 no, and the rest are bigger. So what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite this using 25 because we want to use the biggest one possible. So the square root of 75 is equal to the square root of 25 times the square root of 3. Perfect. Guys, what's the square root of 25 right here? Well, hopefully you say 5 root 3. And that's my answer. That is fully simplified. Okay. Now, there is more than one way to possibly get these answers, right? You could have picked maybe 10 and 2. You could have picked for over here. You could, for this next one, there are multiple ways to go, and I'll show you them. Okay. So the first way, right, we're looking for perfect squares. Okay. I'm going to pick the numbers 4. 4 can go in 13 times. No, not 13. 4, 72. So the first way, I'm going to pick the 4, okay, and that goes in. It'd be root 4 and root not 13, like I was saying earlier, is a mental fart. Okay, is root 18. Well, okay, so square root of 4 is 2, but I can go further with that 18. That's not fully simplified. So I didn't pick the best numbers at the beginning, and I'll show you all the way through. Root 18 is, well, it's root 9 and root 2. And we all should know the square root of 9 is 3. So what I have is 2 from the 4, 3 from the square root of 9, and this root 2. Well, 2 times 3 is 6 root 2. Okay, well, what happens if I picked a different number? Say I didn't come up with 4 and 18. I almost didn't. But let's go back and let's say I picked 9. 9 can go in. Well, if I get my pen here, it'd be the square root of 9 and the square root of 8, because 9 times 8 is 72. The square root of 9 is 3, and I'll bring down the root 8. But I can go further. Root 8 isn't fully simplified either. Well, 8 is 4 and 2, and the square root of 4 is 2. So, again, 3 times 2, 6 root 2, matching our other answer using the 4. Now, the reason why I try to point out the perfect square and the biggest perfect square is because watch how much easier this becomes. Okay, let's go. So I picked 4, I picked 9. Let's pick 36. 36 and 2. What is the square root of 36? 6. And that is our final answer. All right, guys, try the following examples, give it your best, and we'll go over it after.